Okay. Oh, gosh. Sorry. Come on, cat. Okay. So here we go. Today we're going to be talking about figuring out where our vertex is given an equation. So the vertex is important because it's telling us a lot about our parabola. Now, when you have a vertex and it's a regular equation, usually that means that your leading coefficient is positive on your a, if you were talking about standard form, so ax squared plus bx plus c. So your a, if it's positive, then you have a parabola that goes up and you have a minimum, and then you have this axis of symmetry. So the axis of symmetry cuts your parabola in half, so this distance and this distance are the same as this distance and this distance. So it's pretty special. Likewise, if you have this guy that opens downward, no, cat, he has a negative a, so there's a negative in front here. It can be another number as well. As long as it's negative, then he's going to be pointing down, and that gives you a maximum, and again, the axis of symmetry. So the axis of symmetry is going to be whatever your x value is for your vertex, because your vertex sits right on your parabola. So here we go. We're going to do this guy first over here, and notice that he is positive. So since he is positive, he is pointing up, and there is a minimum. All right, so in order to figure out where the vertex actually is, we need to complete the square. So remember, when we complete the square, we're finding a new c value. So we're just focused on these two terms here, okay? So I'm going to keep my x squared and my 16x. Now remember, we can't really change this equation. We can change what it looks like, but the meaning of it in the actual numbers, we can't change. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our b value, which is 16, and we are going to cut that in half and then square it, and that's how we complete the square. This allows us to factor and to figure out where our vertex is going to be, so it's very necessary. 16 divided by 2 is 8, and 8 squared is 64. So that means in order to complete my square, I will need to add 64. But like I said, I can't change my equation, and now I have just changed it by an additional 64. So to balance that out, we're going to put our cute little plus 4 that we're kind of ignoring. And then from that, we're going to just take 64 away. Now, this makes 0, right? So we have changed this equation by 0. We have changed how it looks. But as far as what the value is, we added 64 and then promptly took it away. So we are not really changing it, which is good for us. So now we take these three terms and we factor. When we factor, we get x and then whatever this guy was. So he's a positive 8, and then that is squared. Okay, and then we're going to combine these guys. So 4 minus 64 is negative 60. Okay, oh, I forgot my y equals. From here, we can figure out what our vertex is going to be. You take the opposite of whatever is on the inside of the parentheses, and that becomes your x value, which will be negative 8, and then your y value comes from whatever that guy is. So, and usually they say hk. We'll talk about that a different day. This is your vertex for your parabola. So if you see, it goes pretty low, negative 8 and negative 60, but again, it is pointing up. So that means that our axis of symmetry is going to be whatever this x value is, so x equals negative 8. So that's all the information for these. Now 2 is nice because it doesn't have anything over here, so it's just 0. So whenever we complete the square, we're just going to take off whatever we added on. Because you are always going to add on, so then you must always take off. And the reason that we always add on is because when we complete the square, we always square our answer, and that will always give us a positive. Now there can be a negative inside of my parentheses, and that only matters for when we factor. Okay, moving on. Now, when you have a leading coefficient that is not equal to a positive 1, you cannot complete the square as it is. Okay, this does not work. You can't do it. So the first thing that we are going to do is we are going to take out this negative. Okay, so when we take out the negative, we have to take it out of all three terms. So we're going to have a positive x squared, a negative 10x, and a positive 18. Now we are going to do exactly what we did on number 1, but just on the terms on the inside. So again, we look at these two terms. I take my b term and I cut it in half. and then I square. So negative 10 divided by 2 is negative 5 squared is a positive 25. Again, always getting a positive. Okay, so now I have negative x squared minus 10x, and then we're adding our 25, and then we have our 18, and then we have to subtract our 25. And that's all in the parentheses. And these parentheses will go away in just a second. Oh, sorry. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to factor our trinomial here. So we have negative. When we factor, we have x. This time, since it's a negative 5, we're going to subtract 5 and square that. And then 18 minus 25 is negative 7, so that goes here. Now there is this negative out in front, so what we're going to do now is distribute. We're going to distribute it to this first term, which is in parentheses, and then the second term. Now in the first term, it's not going to do much. We just have a negative hanging out in front there. And then on the second term, this takes this negative and changes it to a positive. We just leave this guy, and we will use him later when we graph. But for now, this is what the form that we need in order to figure out where our vertex is. So our vertex is at the opposite of negative 5, which will be positive 5 and 7. That means that our axis of symmetry is at 5. So again, it's the same exact process. We just have this cute little negative that we're dealing with here. The same thing happens if you have a 2. Again, you can only complete the square if this leading coefficient is a positive 1. So it is a 2. That's not going to work. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is take out the 2. In order to take it out, I just pull it. Okay, so the half, oh, hold on. Okay, so we take out the 2 in front, and 2 divided by 2 is 1. So now we have x squared. 20 divided by 2 is 10x, which is nice. And then we have a fraction, which, whatever, we'll just deal with it. So we're just going to leave it like that, 30 divided by 2, or 3 divided by 2. We'll get to it in a second. We're going to continue on our quest where we complete the square using the first 2 terms. So we have 10 divided by 2 squared. 10 divided by 2 is 5, and 5 squared is 25. So here we go again, 2 out in front, and I'm going to take this binomial and make it a trinomial. So I have x squared and 10x, and we are adding 25. We have our negative 3 halves, and then we also have to subtract 25 to complete our equation and not change it. Then the trinomial, we are going to again factor. So we have 2, and then we're going to have an x. It's a positive 5, so we put that guy there and square it. And then we need to figure out what this is. Okay, so we're going to take, I love my fractiony boxy button, negative 3 over 2 minus 25, and we have negative 53 halves. So we just put that there, negative 53 halves. Okay, now we have to distribute our 2. So this first one will be 2x plus 5 squared. And then we're going to take negative 53 halves and multiply that by 2, which is negative 53. So look, in the end, it becomes really nice. Okay, so our vertex will be at the opposite of the inside. It's very nice. And then we also have that negative 53. And our axis of symmetry will be x equals negative 5. Okay, so now, oh, I forgot to say, since this is positive, we're going up, and there's a min on it. Okay, let's do one more. Number 7. So again, there's a leading coefficient here, so we're going to take him out, and it makes the middle term not so nice, but that is totally fine. So we are going to write negative 3, and then we have got x squared, and then negative, just kidding, that will be nice. Negative 3 and 15, so that will be a positive 5x, and, no, this one becomes a negative 7/3. There we go. Okay, so we're moving on. Now we're going to take these 2 terms, 5 divided by 2 squared, which is just going to be 5 over 2, which is fine, and then we square it, we have 25/4. Okay, so we're going to add 25/4 on here. We're going to make the calculator do all of the work for us, so don't be afraid of the cute little fractions. Negative 3, and then parentheses x squared plus 5x, and we're going to add 25/4 and keep our 7/3 and then again subtract off 25/4 so that everything is nice and lovely. Okay, so we've not changed anything. Now we have -3 and then x, since it's 5/2, we're going to just add 5/2 there. And this is totally fine. We're not actually graphing it, so it's not a big deal. Oh, I forgot my other parenthesis. Silly. Okay, so now we have, oh, you can see that. Okay, -7, thirds minus 25/4, and we get, okay, -103/12. Okay, and then we need to multiply by 3, so we have -3x plus 5/2 squared, and then we're going to multiply that by -3. And yeah, it's still not pretty, but that's okay, whatever, 103/4. So that means that our vertex will be at 5/2, -5/2, sorry, opposite the sign, and at 103/4. And our axis of symmetry is at -5/2. Now, number 8, this guy, he is a fraction. In order to get him to be 1, you're going to do the opposite. So you're not going to divide off. You're going to multiply each of these by 2. So you would multiply this guy by 2, and that will give you x squared. And then you would multiply this guy by 2, and you'd have -20x. And you'd multiply 46 by 2, and that would give you -92. Now, our leading coefficient is 1, so you can just complete the square, and you don't have to take anything out or do it like this. You just do complete number 8 like you did the other ones. If you have any questions, please let me know. Hope you have a great day. Bye, guys.